Things are getting really interesting, ladies and gentlemen, as markets are shaping up to look more bullish than we had previously expected. However, nobody is virtually paying attention. And some of the stuff that Anthony Pompliano shared on CNBC's Squawkbox are quite enlightening. Now, this is off the back of a major partnership between Mastercard and KRAKEN to offer crypto asset payments throughout all of Europe. Combine that with the fact that in the exact same month this is all going down, KRAKEN listed the RLUSD stablecoin and then went ahead and made a post about it on their X account. Now, this is truly interesting because XRP, or better yet, Ripple, acquired a company called Hidden Road, which is a prime brokerage. This is one of the biggest acquisitions in all of crypto history for $1.25 billion, which sets them up to be a prime broker and to integrate the XRPL into virtually everything in this global credit network for institutions, which clears about $3 trillion yearly. Maybe that's why there is more going on than meets the eye, as apparently whales are even accumulating XRP right now. Now, many of you may be like, of course they are, but it's actually nice to look at the data and see proof, because anyone online, any YouTuber, any Twitter account can go and say, look at whales are accumulating, but then they actually have to show the evidence. And so in this video, we're going to uncover it all. We're going to talk about these partnerships. We're going to talk about whether or not XRP is being accumulated. And we'll actually look at the on-chain analytics, as well as what day traders are doing, as well as the price action, and much more. So as always, if you're feeling blessed and bullish, comment 777. And if you're going to be the wealthiest person in your family tree, smash the subscribe button. Hello and welcome back to the Bull Runners YouTube channel. If you're new here, my name is Paul, and you can find me on Twitter or X at PauliDeFi, PAULIEDEFI. And in this video, we're going to be covering quite a bit, and this is actually quite interesting because I think that this really confirms. I know we've had the whole pro-crypto regulation, pro-crypto president in the United States, and virtually none of that has played out in terms of the price action, but I really do believe in the long run, we are still in a major bull market, although we could see some intermediate term lows here in the upcoming weeks, and I'm not too sure what that looks like, which is why we're going to dive into the price action and chart. I typically like to do the chart live while I'm actually doing the video, so I don't take any opinions into my intros or some of the information that I'm sharing, because at the end of the day, you could see all of the most bullish information and you would be like, well, I want to buy the token. But it's one thing to see a lot of positive news, it's another to see a lot of negative price action, which should actually be more telling of what people with real money are doing. The price action is ultimately king, and I like to use fundamental information to help me to build my long-term perspective and approach on whether or not I would actually like to invest in assets, or better yet, asset classes like crypto. One of those major pieces of news which I really like, and personally my favorite exchange, which this is not an advertisement of KRAKEN, is the fact that Mastercard, which is one of the largest payment processors in the world, alongside Visa, they own probably upwards of 80% of the entire market, just partnered with KRAKEN to enable European users to spend crypto at over 150 million merchants worldwide. To dive a bit deeper into this news, KRAKEN is one of the oldest and most liquid and secure cryptocurrency platforms, to which I would completely agree. And over the years, their liquidity has been growing, which has made it nice in terms of trading. But what's cool is this partnership builds a rapid success of KRAKEN Pay, a recently launched feature that enables instant borderless payments in over 300 cryptos and fiat currency. So now crypto truly is a currency in many situations and circumstances. It'll probably automatically convert whatever crypto into the dollar of that specific country, and in this case the EU, right? It would be the euro or potentially even the pound or wherever they're at in just 90 days. And over 200,000 KRAKEN customers have activated their KRAK tag and are sending money worldwide as easily as a text message. So this is actually going to open up the corridor for many people to say, instead of just holding the euro, I would like to actually hold my cryptos, right? And now they're viewed more and more not only as a currency, but as a safe haven asset in a very volatile volatile and inflationary world with all of these fiat currencies. People are just losing trust in their governments, especially in the EU. If you're over there and watching this video and you disagree, I don't know if this is the channel for you. I still invite you to watch these videos. But at the end of the day, the EU has been very draconian in terms of a lot of their measures over the years, and it's only gotten worse. There's less and less freedom there. And at the beginning, that's exactly why we left to become the United States to begin with. And the US started to look more and more like the EU, which is hilarious to me. But anywho, I'm loving this news. Now, Kraken, again, is making some really interesting plays, and this is all happening in the exact same month as the RLUSD stablecoin has consistently been gaining in terms of its market cap. You can see here for quite some time, going back to like January, they had about $53 million, and let me go ahead and get out of the way here. In terms of total market cap, that means that is the amount of reserves that Ripple carried to service their Ripple stablecoin. Then it pumped pretty hard on March 5th from 53 million up to 132 million. And then on March 5th till present day, it's up to 294 million. This is actually quite extensive growth. And as the stablecoin market continues to grow, which they expect to be to the tune of like $2 to $5 trillion over the upcoming years, there is a lot of room for growth for stablecoins like RLUSD, because at the end of the day, there are a lot of stablecoins. But why would RLUSD win versus the rest? Well, I would argue one of those major reasons is because, I mean, look at all these stable coins, right? Because XRP is still the fourth largest crypto by market cap. They do have a lot of attention and adoption above virtually all other major cryptocurrencies except for Ethereum and Bitcoin, and Ethereum is losing steam tremendously. The second major reason I think RLUSD is going to continue to do really well and grow, which will ultimately bring more money and liquidity into the XRP ledger, and ultimately a lot of that money is going to find its way into XRP, is because Ripple acquired the prime brokerage house Hidden Road, which is extremely large and has major partnerships, has regulatory clearances, and does $3 trillion per year in clearing money. That said, this right here, the majority of all of the business that they run, they are likely going to work to integrate into the XRPL, and that's something that they actually have confirmed. That's why they bought it. This is their moat. This is their hedge into the future. Now, combine that with the fact that the European Union has implemented a comprehensive regulatory framework called MiCA, which is Markets in Crypto Assets Regulation. This framework is actually not crypto friendly. There are very few MiCA compliant stablecoins. USDT, the largest stablecoin by market cap, currently sitting at, let's see here, 144 billion, and third by total amount of money in it, does not even comply, which means as you start to expand into an international trade, or world, I should say, in the EU with the KRAKEN deal, with the Mastercard deal, you know, having RLUSD available, the fact that there's Hidden Road, and now that there's only two MiCA compliant tokens so far that we've seen in terms of stable coins, and that is USDC and RLUSD. This is huge because the MiCA compliant tokens will be the only ones that win in the EU, as they are typically a little bit more harsh or take stronger positions on crypto asset regulation. That said, they have a stablecoin oversight. Issuers of asset reference tokens and e-money tokens must maintain liquid reserves, right, just stablecoins, and comply with transparency and capital requirements. Stablecoins are supervised by European Banking Authority. In other words, this right here is exactly what RLUSD and Ripple have already been working towards and doing. Their goal has been to be one of the most transparent stablecoins in the entire market, holding one-to-one dollar equivalents or dollars for the stablecoins that they issue, which is why, right, they haven't grown as much as we would like, but it is nice to see that they're consistently adding and growing the market cap. And I'm willing to bet, like, this is one of the easiest bets that I could take in all of crypto, that not only as stablecoin market cap grows, RLUSD stablecoin market cap is also going to continue to grow, just because this is the current trajectory and trend of the market. That Hidden Road partnership, better yet, just ownership, is huge. and XRP will be a large beneficiary of it. And so maybe this is why whales are currently accumulating XRP according to this post. Wallets holding over 1 billion XRP have started accumulating yet again and have been consistently buying at the $2 zone. Matter of fact, wallets holding between 10 million to 100 million XRP are at all-time highs. In other words, there's always a battle between bulls and bears. However, when it comes to the large whales on both the bear side and the bull side, the large whales on the buy side are buying more than the bears are actually selling. However, you know me, I actually like to confirm or verify this information using on-chain analytics. So we're going to go ahead and do that, because it's one thing to look at a post. It's a completely different to actually know whether or not they're telling the truth. And I've had to do this enough inside of crypto Twitter. So that said, before we actually get into that information, if you haven't already gotten access to our free altcoin secrets guidebook, where you're going to unlock 23 secrets that are going to help you reach all of your goals in the crypto space, head on over to bullrunners.com/altcoin secrets. You should see this page. You'll also see that link in the description or bio below to get your free ebook. All you have to do is click this button, enter your email, and we'll send it directly to your inbox. This is going to be a game changer for you. We have tons of reviews on it, and I'm excited that I got to be a part of it. So let's go ahead and dive into the on-chain analytics for XRP supply distribution. And what I'm going to focus on is the absolute amount of coins, which basically means that if I were to pull this one up right here, 10 to 100 coins, and I know it's probably kind of small and hard to see, then that would mean that anyone that holds between 10 to 100 coins in an XRP wallet address would pop up. If the line goes up, that means we have more and more addresses that have 10 to 100 coins. On the flip side, if the line actually starts to decline, that means those addresses are also declining. So I'm going to pull up right here the 1 billion to infinity coins, which means this is people that have a billion tokens. Over on this green right here, you can see that that's the price action of XRP, which we consistently look at on the channel. It looked very similar, right? Our all-time high there was 340. Our last high right over here was 290, so on and so forth. Then all of the other lines are different wallet distributions, and we're looking mostly at whales here. We're also just going to look at literally any retail investor who has between 0 or basically 0.1 tokens all the way up to 100,000 XRP, which I would consider still not necessarily a whale, not even a major investor. Investors play with $1 million or $2 million at a time minimum, right? We're talking retail investors. So let me go ahead and pull up this entire chart. And as you can see here, we have anyone that holds 1.1 to 100,000 XRP. Over here, we have 10 million to 100 million XRP, and this is major investors. And then these are minor investors, anyone who holds between 1 to 10 million XRP. And we're going to focus first on this, right? Retail investors have consistently been accumulating since these lows. In other words, the people are still really up at about $1.18, which is right behind me. Then you have these minor investors that have also been accumulating. And so you see this trend consistently climbing, right? Over on the right, this blue line consistently climbing, putting in new highs, even through this distribution phase, leads me to believe that investors also think long-term we are going to be going up. And you know what's interesting is through this entire phase, from basically 290 high through 340 high, and even into this range right here back in, let's see, February 6th of 2025, your major investors have actually been distributing or selling. See how the trend has been down? But since that point in time, now they have been buying. And the trend has officially been up since going back to February 14th through March 1st. In other words, all of these ranges right through here, major investors have consistently been buying and accumulating more and more XRP. The lows before we started getting into this range was somewhere on average between 6.8 billion XRP in their wallets, is now sitting at 7.5 billion XRP. That is a lot of XRP. But really now, when I minimize this and remove all of it, let's just keep the retail on there. Okay, and we're going to focus on anyone who has $1 billion plus tokens. You can see that there's very little interesting distribution metrics on here. In other words, we are really flat down here, and this is because these are actual whales or even the team at Ripple sitting on these wallets where they really don't do much with them, which is why you'll see a lot of this flatlining, because no one really holds this much XRP except for either maybe one of their old early venture capital firms that invested in them, or the company wallet itself. Since this point in time, you can see they had 23, and really we're looking at this red line, 23 billion XRP. They did accumulate quite a bit right here going back to March 28th. And since that point in time, it went from 24.6 billion to 24.8 billion. Yes, the bigger wallets have been accumulating since these lows in March 27th of this year. In other words, maybe they know something is coming, or maybe they're looking at anything below $2 and saying that's a steal, which is why we had this double bottom and a break back above the $2 range recently. Whales do look like they're accumulating. Now, it's not an insane amount, but when you combine that with all the buy pressure from minor investors, major investors, and even retailers, something's got to give. And I would believe that I would like to see a directional change in the trend from an intermediate term downtrend back into our longer term uptrend. So what we were looking at that chart is this double bottom with a higher low right here and a break back above this range support, right? Typically, and I'll go ahead and put this line right here and put another line in, what is that, 190 up to like 205. Typically, right, when you get a break below a range that's been consistently a support throughout, you know, the chart history, you get to have a resistance and you see breakdowns. However, for whatever reason, look at the amount of buying that happened right here at about, you know, an average price of 175 to 182, and then yet again right here into this range right here at 205. Now we broke above and might see some support back at the 195 range. This is still technically, though, an intermediate term downtrend. We're seeing a series of lower highs and lower lows, so I don't like to jump the gun too much, because at the end of the day, it's also equally possible and potential we consistently see breaks, maybe even potentially up to the 225 range one last time before a major breakdown for a new low. And so I do want to play patient, but it's nice to see the confirmation that long-term people are still very bullish and that some major wallets are accumulating. And ultimately, it gives me confirmation that nobody really knows where the market's going. Because even if big investors and wallets see long-term they'd like to invest and hold something like XRP, let's say 5 to 10 years down the road, why wouldn't they want to buy an average price of $190 to $2, right? If they think it's going to go to $10, $20 plus. At the end of the day, that's still a very good investment. And ultimately, you have to buy when you can, when there's liquidity. Where, you know, let's just say the price isn't too high up. I don't want to push the price too high up, right? This is what probably happened right there. So long term, yes, the trend is up. Short term, I'm not seeing a breakout in order for me to confirm that I would like to enter with any size. So it's one of those things that, you know what, with all this bullish news that we recently saw, this could have been the bottom. I'd still like to see some highs above the prior highs back here. I'd still like to see the directional change in the trend above this trend line right here. And ultimately, I'll have far more confirmation. In terms of confirmation long term, I am still bullish. I still think we're in a longer term uptrend. It just might have been elongated a bit. We might have to wait through the summer. And I think that this one interview from Squawkbox summarizes it perfectly. Let's have a listen.
Where are we going here? And how are you thinking about Bitcoin relative to gold in this particular moment?
Yeah, I think that's what everyone's really talking about right now. Bitcoin is down about 10% to start the year. Gold's up 20%. But if you look out over 1 year, they're both up about 35%. So it's pretty interesting that there's been this divergence. But if you go back and you take a look, you can actually see that gold usually leads these rallies. Okay. And nobody really knows why that happens. My kind of guess would be that a lot of the central banks and institutional investors, they're either not approved to buy Bitcoin or they're not used to running to Bitcoin in these moments of kind of geopolitical uncertainty. What we do see, though, is when gold runs about 100 days later or so, Bitcoin not only catches up, it usually runs much harder. And so you get that kind of higher volatility.
How much are you seeing people either buying or selling Bitcoin direct, meaning actual Bitcoin, versus playing the ETF market and the ETF market effectively buying the Bitcoin or selling the Bitcoin on their behalf?
Yeah, I think you get both now, right? It used to be obviously all retail and all direct and spot market, but I do see a lot of people using these ETFs. And I think what a lot of people kind of missed over maybe the last couple of months is there was a sovereign wealth fund that came out and said, hey, we actually got Bitcoin exposure through the ETF. And the reason why I thought that was interesting is there's a lot of conversation about Bitcoin and the geopolitical kind of debate, if you will. And one of the things is if you are buying Bitcoin and you're actually taking control of that Bitcoin in a self-custody way, you may be doing it for things other than price. tariffs. You may be worried about the U.S. Treasury market or maybe sanctions or something like that. But if you're buying Bitcoin via the ETFs, you're simply just getting price exposure. You're not actually doing it from a geopolitical strategy standpoint. And so I think there's a lot of countries around the world that are saying to themselves, well, if the United States has a strategic Bitcoin reserve, they're openly talking about the fact that they're going to go buy more, we should have a Bitcoin strategy. Doesn't mean that we have to buy. We could just sit it out. But we need to have a decision here. And buying the ETF allows me to get price exposure, but not actually take on the geopolitical risk of having to talk to you.
Do you think they're going to actually be buying? I mean, that is a big question right now. I mean, yes, we have indicated that we're going to create this reserve, at least initially with, confiscated Bitcoin and the like. But do you think that there's definitely a sort of all green lights ahead for the taxpayer effectively to be buying Bitcoin? Because that's what we're talking about. Excuse me?
They're talking about tariff money going.
So I went down to Washington, D.C. last week to the White House. I interviewed Bo Hines, who's the executive director of the President's Advisor Council for Digital Assets. And I explicitly asked him this question. And the thing that he said to me that I think kind of took away was not only are they going to have the Bitcoin Strategic Reserve, which we have, they are going to buy as much Bitcoin as they possibly can. And
with what money? And does that have to be authorized by Congress?
So there's a bunch of different ways they could do it. I think what they're trying to figure out is what is the best way to do it. And so a couple of examples would be they could revalue the gold, they could sell some of that, they can then go and they could buy Bitcoin.
Does that have to be done with Congress's approval?
There's a debate around who would be responsible, who would be involved. And they have
all this has to be done with executive order? I mean,
well, they have an interagency group right now that's working together. And so at that table is everyone from energy policymakers to law enforcement to economic advisors. Kind of everyone is trying to figure this out. I don't think you're going to see kind of very rash decision making kind of unilaterally, but I do think that working group is trying to figure it out. But you also have things like the tariff revenue or other areas where we may be saving money that we previously were wasting or abusing. And so I think that is probably, to me, the thing that the market most misunderstands is it's not just, hey, we're going to hold the Bitcoin. They're going to actively try to buy Bitcoin. And there's other countries around the world, they may be acquiring Bitcoin by mining and using natural resources that they have there. And so I think there's a lot of strategies here that the U.S. is going to pursue.
That are US based, one of those being XRP. We've already seen Donald Trump mention XRP. It's on their radar. They want to add it to a strategic reserve. Imagine as Bitcoin continues to dominate and grow alongside gold, so will XRP. And although XRP has a completely different business model, I think long-term we should be extremely bullish, which means we're looking for areas or retraces that we can buy back into on XRP. So anyways, there you have it, folks. If you enjoyed the video, be sure to head on over to bullrunners.com and also subscribe to the channel. If you want to check out Altcoin Pro University, we have it. It's your one-stop shop for tools, training, and resources to hit all of your crypto goals. Thanks so much for watching the video, and I will see you next time. Goodbye.